Hello everyone, I wanted to shoot a video here on my modded Arcade1Up. So let's take a look here at the control deck first. So I'm using the EG Starts 4-player Arcade1Up kit. So it's got the blue, the yellow, the green, and the red control set. Now I was going to use the colored buttons here because there are 8 per player for the coin buttons, and I actually had those in place, but as it turns out, one of the yellow face buttons was not working correctly. Like something was messed up with the button itself. So since I've already used 7 of them up here on the face, I didn't have any extra ones to use here. So what I ended up doing was replacing it with the coin button that comes with it. It actually says coin. And what I did was I replaced the other 3 just so it would match. Doesn't look too bad. I did like the color button better myself. Now actually, I was not a fan of the LED buttons when I saw them online in different tutorials and in pictures that I've seen on Reddit. However, in person, they actually look pretty nice. So again, they probably look terrible in this video, but in person, they actually look pretty nice. So if you're hesitant about buying the LED kit, I would recommend just giving it a chance because you may actually, in fact, like it in person. Okay, so one of the things I wanted to talk about here is adding the extra buttons, because the original cabinet only includes 2 buttons per player, and it's these bottom 2 that are included with the actual Arcade1Up for TMNT. So when I was thinking about adding, or when I was going to add the additional controls, I was worried about having to measure and getting the measurements correctly. And I'm like, wait a second, there's a hell of a lot easier way to do this than that. So let me show you what I did. Okay, so to use my method for adding the additional buttons, what you're gonna need is a pen, a piece of paper, a tape measure, and a spade bit. In this case, the spade bit needs to be 1 1/8 inches. Okay, so once this control deck is disassembled and you've got all the factory arcade hardware out of it, so the joysticks, the buttons, all of that, what you need to do is take the empty shell, lay it on a flat surface, and what I did was I took a piece of paper, so this piece of paper here, and I stuck it underneath the control deck. And what I did was I lined up the left and the top edge of the piece of paper with the left and the top edge of the control deck. And I'm not able to slide it all the way under there because it's hitting the side of the cabinet here. But once this is disassembled, you can do that. And once you do that, you can see the piece of paper. It'll be, going this way, and you can see it through the factory bored out holes. So what I did was I took a pen and I literally traced those circles. And those are the circles that you see right here. So I literally just traced them. And then I folded the piece of paper so that the topmost circle was right at the edge of that fold. And then I took the piece of paper and flipped it upside down. Again, the angle here will now be exactly the same as it was this way. So then if you look, so the rightmost button is closest to the edge. So that's going to be above the factory button here on the right. So what I did was from that factory button hole, I measured up 5/8 of an inch. I just determined that I was going to space them out 5/8 of an inch. You can measure that however you want, but I went with 5/8 of an inch. And what I did was I stuck the piece of paper at that 5/8 inch mark. So it's getting hard to keep it there, but the bottom of the circle here will be, and the edge of the paper will be right at that 5/8 inch mark. And then I measured from the bottom edge of the paper to the edge of the control deck just to make sure that it was straight. And once I knew it was straight, I stuck the spade bit through the piece of paper into the MDF, and it made the marks on the MDF board. And those will be the marks where I'm going to drill it out. Now we'll go over to Raphael, did the same exact thing. So I took the piece of paper, stuck it underneath here, Made sure it lined up with the top and the right edge. And I drew or traced out the outline of the circles here. And that gave me these circles. And then again, I folded the piece of paper along the edge. I flipped it upside down. And this time the left button is the lower button here, closest to the edge. So again, I measured up 5/8 of an inch from this factory hole, stuck the piece of paper on there, and again, measured from the bottom of the piece of paper to the edge of the control deck just to make sure that the paper was straight. And then I stuck the spade bit through the paper and made my holes there. So you can see the holes through the paper. So once those were done, and those were the easy ones, if we look here at Donatello uses the same angle as what Raphael had, and Leonardo uses the same angle for the buttons as Michelangelo. So I used the same exact template here. I started with the factory row just because that was easier. There's already 2 buttons there, so really I only need to add 1. So what I did was I literally stuck this piece of paper over covering the middle, what will be the middle hole here. And I measured from the top edge of the paper to the top edge of the control deck, again, just to make sure that it was straight. And then I just stuck the spade bit through there and made the mark. And that gave me the location for this hole. And then for the next set, I essentially did what I did over here. So I measured up 5/8 of an inch, stuck the edge there, made sure that circle was sitting at the 5/8 inch mark, and then again measured the top of the paper to make sure that it was the same distance to the top of the control deck. That would tell me that the buttons are straight, the paper is straight. And then I just added these additional buttons. And then I did the same thing for the third button in the row here. So once we get over to Michelangelo, again, I flipped the paper back around. So I'm using the Leonardo template. I started with the factory row buttons. And what I did was I started with stuck this over the middle button there. And again, I measured from the top of the paper to the top of the control deck just to make sure the paper was straight. Stuck the spade bit through there, left me a mark, was able to drill that out. And then the same thing for the top row. So I actually started from this side this time, and I measured up 5/8 of an inch, stuck it on there. Again, measure from the top of the paper to the top of the control deck to make sure it's straight, and then stick the spade bit through the paper template into the MDF board to leave a mark. And then essentially did the same thing for the top button. And that, my friends, is how I added the extra buttons to the control deck. So there's no fancy measuring. If you just do the template route, I found that to be really, really easy to do. So the last thing I want to talk about here with regards to the control deck is the deck protector. Because as you can see, I am using the factory deck protector here. Now, in other videos on YouTube, some people say just throw this out. Some people spray a clear acrylic over the top of this. Some people decide to actually paint this so that the deck itself is a specific color. I like the looks of the TMNT cabinet overall as a complete package, but I also like the look of the control deck. So I wanted to maintain that, and I also wanted to protect it if possible. So what I did was, after all the holes were drilled out in the actual deck itself, I took the deck protector, laid it over the top of it, and I just made sure that everything was lined up. So I made sure that these screw holes that we've got here, so there's 4 in total, 2 on each side, made sure those were lined up, and that the factory cutouts here in the deck protector lined up with the existing holes. But pretty much if you make sure that the screw holes are lined up, you should be good to go. And what I did was I just took a black marker and I just put a dot, and again, I didn't measure this, I just eyeballed it. I put a dot at the center of each of the new holes that I had put on the board. Right, so just had a black marker, just stuck a dot on top of the deck protector. So after that, in preparation for this, what I did was I purchased a spade bit set and I purchased a hole saw set, because I was reading that, or I had asked a question on Reddit, on the Arcade1Up subreddit, Like, do you just use the same spade bit to bore out the deck protector? People were saying, no, don't do that. Use a hole saw. Well, when I got to the point of actually cutting this out, I found that the spade bit actually worked a hell of a lot better than the hole saw. So what I did was I actually am in the process of finishing my basement. So I've got some spare drywall or scraps of drywall in my basement still. I just stuck the deck protector on top of that. So I didn't care that I was drilling through into something, and just stuck the spade bit right on the center of that, that black mark that I put on there, and just started drilling this out, and it went really, really well. The only catch is that the holes that you drill out, they're going to be a little burred, so you've got to scrape off any of the little burrs that are left on there. But otherwise, yeah, it went extremely well, and I'm really happy with the results here. Now, because I didn't measure and I just went by eye, if you look here, and this is actually sorry, that's not it. These are actually the factory holes up here. If you look, they don't actually line up all that well with the factory buttons as it is. So these are the holes that I had drilled. Those are a little off on the Leonardo one. The Michelangelo one, I think is the best out of all of them. Well, that and Donatello too, I guess. Those both came out pretty well. The Raphael one, the top rightmost button was hitting the edge here, so it wasn't sitting completely flat. I literally just grabbed the button and just kind of yanked it or pushed it this way, and it actually moved. So the deck protector was able to fall down there. Button works just fine, so it didn't seem to hurt it any. And then, yeah, I just put the factory Arcade1Up screws back in there to hold this on, as well as put the control deck, screw the control deck back down into the cabinet itself. So if you're watching tutorials on YouTube that are saying, don't worry about this, just throw it out, completely disagree. You can use this factory deck protector just fine. As long as you do the 5/8 inch or greater between buttons, you shouldn't run into any issue of being too close. I did have one minor issue here. If you look, really small gap between buttons, but as you can see, didn't crack, didn't break. So if you do go this route, I highly recommend picking up a brand new spade bit, because that's what I used on this, was a brand new spade bit. So it was super sharp, didn't have to worry about it pulling or tearing at the acrylic. But yeah, overall, really happy with how using the spade bit worked on the factory deck protector. So if we look at my coin buttons, so I opted to put the coin buttons within the side of the control deck here. Some people put them up on top on the face. Some people have put them down here on the lower portion of the cabinet. I like the looks of them on the side of the control deck. The Leonardo and Raphael ones are centered within here. And the coin ones on Michelangelo and Donatello, I believe, I don't exactly remember the measurement, but it's a specific measurement over from the angled corner right here. And I just did the same measurement over for both of them, just so that they were even there. But that's what I opted to do for the coin buttons. So this is running a 32 gig image on a Raspberry Pi. I'll include information on all the parts that I used. You can hear volume right now, or sound right now, but the volume is as loud as it goes. These buttons right now are not functional, right? They don't do anything. They're not even hooked up. They're just unhooked inside of this. I've got the factory speakers. The factory speakers terminate at a 3.5 millimeter, just regular mini jack. So like what you'd find on headphones. I've got that plugged directly into the LCD board. The LCD board, at least the mini jack portion, is not amplified, so this is as loud as it gets at the moment. There is a little accessory board that plugs into the LCD board, and there is an option on there to turn the volume up and down. I've got it cranked to 100%, so this is as loud as it's getting right now. What I plan on doing is, on the LCD board, there is a speaker output. So there's like I think it's a 4-pin ribbon cable that you can plug into that, that apparently is amplified. So if I take the factory speaker wire and then essentially cut the end of that off and splice that into a ribbon cable and plug it in, I believe I'll have amplified audio from what people online have told me. I don't know if I'm gonna go that route or if I'm just gonna go with an amplifier that I'm gonna mount to the back here, kind of up here to the top, just so I can control the volume. I'll probably go that route because that's much easier, but I haven't done that yet. So I just want to make sure that I was able to get this up and running. So that's really the only thing I'm lacking at the moment. In the back, which I'm not going to show you, there's plenty of videos out there to show you how to configure and set all of this up. I'm not going to do that. This is my first attempt. And everything in the back is a mess at the moment, just because I had to take the control deck apart to swap buttons, and I just wanted to make sure it was all working. So it's a real mess back there. But what I'm using is an LCD controller, the Raspberry Pi. I've got a power switch back there. That's not a power switch. I've got a power strip back there that I'm using that's got all the components plugged into it. And I think that's really it. In terms of the quality of the EG Starts buttons, they got a 4, I think they're 4 out of 5 stars on Amazon. I found them to be somewhat cheap. I mean, I know they're not super, they're not like a super sturdy set or anything, but when I compared them to the Arcade1Up controls, they only felt like a minor step above that. They are heavier, but they don't seem like they're significantly better quality, just like I said, a minor step up. And then I have had an issue with a couple of the buttons. There was one blue one that simply just did not click at all. Like it seemed like it was broken inside, like something was wrong with the switch. And then, like I said, I had an issue with this yellow one that I had installed, and that's why I had to swap out the colored buttons for the coins for the actual coin buttons, because I needed to replace that one. So the quality on them seems to be sort of iffy. I think they're just a minor step up from the Arcade1Up. But for now, I think they'll work. I don't know if they'll hold up to heavy gameplay, but I don't think my unit's gonna get that. So yeah, so that's my little video here. If you have any questions, feel free to send them to me in the comments, and I will try to get those answered for you.